Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Good Guys Sports, joined by myself, your host for this week, Blake Gerke, and our usual cast of characters here, Jackson Gerke and Mike Roby. And we got a couple huge sports topics going on in May. Very busy sports month. We're going to be doing a recap of some of the happenings in the NFL draft this past weekend, which was in Green Bay. Going to be giving you a little preview of this weekend's big sporting event, the Kentucky Derby. And we're also going to be recapping and providing an update on all of the big NHL and NBA playoff matchups. Joined by Blake Lomberger here as well. So, really exciting show. But let's go ahead and start with a recap of the show that we did last week, where we did a big mock preview of the NFL draft. And I think we got a lot of our picks pretty close to the actual draft. Maybe not the exact team, but so overall, a lot of the big players we were expecting to see go off the board quickly did. The likes of Cam Ward, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Will Campbell, Mason Graham, Ashton Genty. We saw a lot of these guys go early. I think probably the biggest surprise in terms of that top 10 in the NFL draft that we saw wasn't maybe the player that wasn't picked, but it ended up being the team that traded into the number two spot. Of course, I'm referring to the trade the Jacksonville Jaguars made to acquire Travis Hunter with that second pick, where they gave up obviously their pick, which was the fifth pick this year, their first round pick next year, and some other draft capital. So a pretty hefty trade, but obviously they feel the player they're getting there in Travis Hunter, possibly a number one receiver and number one cornerback, is worth that draft capital. We can get to the Shador Slanders slide a bit later, but Jack, I'll start with you. In terms of that move the Jaguars made to acquire Travis Hunter, how do you rate that trade from a Jacksonville and Cleveland perspective? Did they give up too much, or is Hunter worth it, you think?
Oh, I oh to me, I think Hunter's worth it. Think about it. Nobody thought Trevor Hunter wanted to play for the Cleveland Browns. Well, the Jaguars just made a gutsy and bold trade move to get Travis Hunter, who can play both sides of the ball on offense and defense. He can rely and do it all, and should help one of the units to to get better protection and really better play from Trevor Warren. So that to me was a huge win for the Jaguars because what they did was a was huge, and they made a big splash move. And for what the team did down in Jacksonville, that this team really made a surprising move that nobody saw coming. Thought it was going to stay with Cleveland, but Jaguars just had other ideas, and that is what happened, which was the big trade at number two, where they made this trade and just really made things a lot more interesting. And I think that Travis Hunter in Duval County is really going to make things more exciting for Jaguars fans. And
Duval.
I believe the fans down there will make things more exciting and interesting. That those fans will give them a lot to cheer about. And I think that trade to get Trevor Hunter was a win for me.
Interesting. Yeah. No, he's certainly an exciting player. Mike, do you think ultimately they gave up too much for Hunter, or do you think he's kind of one of those once in a generation players? Doesn't really matter what you gave up. He's going to be that much of a franchise starter for them.
Yeah, well, time will tell. It's probably good for Hunter to be in Jacksonville versus in Cleveland.
Right. From the player perspective. Yeah, definitely.
But Cleveland did end up picking Mason Graham
Right.
with the fifth pick, and that's a good pick. That'll help the Browns. And I
Certainly.
believe they also get don't they get the Jaguars round one pick next year?
That's right. Yeah. Hmm.
So, I think it's probably one of those trades where it's probably good on both teams
Yeah. Yeah.
because the Browns ended up drafting two quarterbacks
Right. Yeah.
They'll probably end up drafting a quarterback in round one next year.
Well, there you go. It's given it's the Browns, we never really know what to expect with them, do
I
we?
mean,
But
yeah.
I suppose getting draft capital is easy to sell to your owner
Hmm.
and fan base, right? In terms of, well, we weren't necessarily sure Hunter was going to put us over the edge next year, so we'll collect some picks and kind of reassess next year, given kind of
Yeah.
their situation, right?
Hmm.
Blake, I know you're quite fond of Duval, as you pointed out. I mean, something for the Jaguars fan base to be pretty excited about. It's a big swing, certainly from their new young GM. But you think Jaguar fans should be pretty happy with getting Hunter, right, Blake?
I got two things. First, I think Travis Hunter needs to call Major League Baseball's front office and the Dodgers and Shohei Ohtani and say thank you so much for proving that two positions is worth a higher draft pick or a higher dollar amount.
Yeah.
Two, Jackson, can I get a Duval?
Duval.
There you go. It's certainly he's going to be one to watch next year for sure. The Jaguars have, playoff aspirations. They still have the keys to the franchise with Trevor Lawrence, but they obviously need some help in terms of giving him weapons, and obviously they hope Hunter is going to be able to provide that lockdown corner. Well, curious thing to see, like we mentioned last week, is the split of how much they play him on offense and how much they play him on defense, and obviously that's something that they'll have to work out. But like Blake said, if they're gonna obviously, if we're just talking about a monetary capital draft capital value, the Jaguars see him as getting two players for the price of one in terms of giving up that pick next year, right? So if he ends up being a number one corner and number one receiver, then maybe the Jaguars will think they got a pretty good deal here with what they gave up. So definitely interesting selection for sure. Interesting trade. Rest of the kind of top five went pretty chalk in terms of Carter to the Giants, Will Campbell lineman to the Patriots. Good to see. I thought Genty landing with the Raiders, I was pretty excited about. I think he's going to be an exciting piece for them. They're obviously kind of in the reloading mode in Vegas in terms of vetting Geno, hiring Pete Carroll. So I think it's going to be a fun piece to watch. I think it'll be a great fantasy option as well for next year from that running back position for sure. Any other picks in that sort of top half of the draft, first round? I know we had only the only other quarterback we had going was a trade up from the Giants who took Jackson Dart. Obviously, any other picks in the first round that anybody was surprised by or thought was a good selection? Jackson, did any of the picks stand out to you?
Oh yeah. So Nick it, near Imarama from the South Carolina safety who's getting drafted to our Seahawks played his high school ball at Irmo South in Irmo, which is a suburb outside of Columbia there in South Carolina. That he will become the X factor difference maker for the Seahawks. I which meaning that he will make many pick six as he can to return for a touchdown, and he will be the X factor difference maker for the Seahawks, which really could make a big difference for our Seahawks. To me, which I feel like to me will be one of our Gamecocks that got drafted. Also, another player from the Gamecocks, Tonka Hemingway. Remember that name? Whenever I think of that name, I think of my childhood. He will be playing for the Raiders as defensive tackle, so he will be very fun to watch for what he has to bring for the Raiders. I think that would be very fascinating. Which I feel like would be the difference maker to me,
What
which
about
I
any other of the first round selections? Not just overall any of the players in the first round that you thought maybe went too late or too early. We can talk about Sanders here in a second, but just any other players from the first round that you think was a good pick from a team. Like me personally, I think a good pick sort of later in the first round was the Eagles selecting Jahad Campbell from Alabama. I think he's going to be another one of those big defensive players from Georgia, Alabama that the Eagles tend to always gravitate towards on the defensive side of the ball, that they can just plug and play into that system. So I personally think he's going to be a really good pick. Mike, were you happy with the Commanders tackle they ended up
Yeah,
selecting?
I was picking Josh Connerly, uh, offensive tackle out of Oregon. Uh, Big help, particularly when you look at the offensive tackle they acquired from the Texans earlier in a trade. You know, the Commanders are really beefed up their offensive line, which is a good thing. So I was very happy with that, and then them picking Trey Amos, the cornerback out of Mississippi, in round two. He pairing with Lattimore
Yeah.
for coverage. I think they did well. I'm happy with that. I think we said last week there was going to be a whole lot of offensive linemen, a whole bunch of beef in this draft, and I think that held true.
Yeah, no,
Four out
I think we're spot on there.
4 out of the first 15 picks were offensive linemen.
Yeah, we had a couple of guards as well go in the first
Hmm.
round with
Yeah.
Zabel to Seattle, Booker
Well,
Booker to the Cowboys, right?
Booker
Top
went to the
15, yeah.
Cowboys. Yeah.
Yeah, so guards, tackles, defensive tackles. Yeah, it was a big boy draft for sure.
Hmm.
Hey, speaking of big boy draft, just want to give a shout out to you guys, especially Jackson for the movie recommendation. Watch Draft Day the
Oh
day
yeah,
before the draft, and
great
that's
film.
all I could think about during the draft when teams were moving and shaking and
Oh
willing
yeah,
and is that movie. That's what's going on. You just don't think about what's going on behind the scenes. But fun fact about the drafting came from Draft Day movie, which is shocking that I think twice in history, and I believe in the first round, that teams have run out of the clock actually, and they forfeit the pick when you run out of the clock. If you can't get the trade deal done or you don't know who you're going to take, you actually forfeit the pick, and it's happened twice.
yeah.
So I felt like Mike would maybe know those years and what happened, but did
Oh
not
yeah.
know that.
Oh yeah. I mean, the clock isn't just there for show, right, Mike? I mean, if that clock hits zero and your pick's not in, we're moving this thing on, right?
Yeah, they should.
Now,
Yeah.
we should mention, Jack, the biggest probably storyline from the draft was obviously the other quarterback taken in the first round was not Shador Sanders, it was Jackson Dart, and Sanders ended up sliding quite a bit all the way into the fifth round, which not a lot of people had on their board. So were you surprised by his fall and some of the other quarterbacks that were taken ahead of him?
Yeah, I was. The panel on ESPN NFL Network, what depending on what draft show you watch on the various network, no matter who you're watching on, that they all had different opinions on how this all played out because everybody thought he was going to get undrafted and not get drafted in this year's draft and just end up getting undrafted somewhere. And yet the Steelers and the Giants were on the clock and they were going to take a quarterback. They uh they decided to pass on and just go with a different player in a different position. The Giants and Browns and Steelers just had other ideas. They just didn't want to go that route of taking a quarterback and take a different player in a different position. So they decided to do that. And I mean, look, I feel bad for Shador because really, really, I'm just hearing a lot of complaints and just how I really don't understand is how, and I really don't, and how raising so many question marks on how he didn't get drafted in the first round and even in the second round or even possibly end up getting drafted late third round, fourth round to the Browns, which everybody had different mixed feelings and reactions from what I can understand. So that's I get it. It's tough and it's something that you really have to deal with and I get it and that's I mean that's really the part of the draft and the beauty of it and I totally get it and I understand where it's at and I certainly can relate to the movie Draft Day with that reaction of how people get frustrated with Big Bummer watch. It's that kind of same kind of thing. So I think that
Also Cleveland, yeah.
yeah,
Ask you a
well
question,
yes,
Jack.
yeah.
Was Cleveland originally supposed to take him just in an earlier round, so they got a better deal out of it, or who did we
Mm,
expect to pick him
I
up?
don't think I don't think there was one
Yeah, I
set
don't think so.
destination. I think it was a couple teams that needed a quarterback. And I think some of the speculation was that Shador met with a couple teams that needed a quarterback, and they weren't exactly impressed by the meetings. So, like the likes of the Giants and the Saints, obviously ended up going in a different direction quarterback wise with
Yeah.
Jackson Dart and Tyler Show, right? So,
Yeah, and some of the scuttlebutt was that Steelers would pick him with the 21st
right,
pick
yeah,
in the first round, and that didn't happen. And the Browns ended up picking Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon in round three.
for him, yeah, they got two quarterbacks. She was should have Sanders was second quarterback they took, which is
And
even
and
crazier. Yeah,
then they picked Sanders up in round five.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
So,
back to the movie Draft Day. What did the teams call that were supposed to get him and say, "What do you know about him? Why are you not taking him? What did you find out?" So it's you wonder if when this team saw Pittsburgh not take him, they're all the GMs are calling and saying, "Pittsburgh, what did you find out about him? What do you know? Why are
Yeah.
you not taking him?"
yeah, nobody went to his birthday party. It's I think right.
Oh
So.
man, yeah, Blake, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, no, it was interesting. Yeah, it was. I mean, certainly if, Shador didn't have a chip on his shoulder now, then certainly
Oh
his
man.
draft fall will give him the motivation. We'll see if he's
Mhm.
able to harness that and
Tom
kind of
Brady
win the
vibes.
Cleveland job. Yeah, I mean, we'll certainly see, won't we? We'll certainly see. So,
So yeah, wait, yeah, it would be very interesting to see because not attending one of his birthday parties and just having to deal with all of that and really yeah, like I said, so many question marks for what his playability because you're going to a place where you're going to have to deal with quarterback competition, Joe Flacco into his 40s, and as well as many other rookie quarterbacks there. So, yeah, there's so many questions to be raised for training camp and for their offseason program for what the Browns should do for QB1 or QB2 or QB3. So, yeah, going forward, lots of questions to be answered up there in Cleveland. So, yeah, should be very interesting to see how this quarterback competition plays out. And well, I have you, Blake. Before we move on, is I want to get your thoughts on the Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Urberg over the Shador Sanders prank call.
Oh
If you
man.
heard anything about that,
Which
want to
Blake?
get
Me or the brother Blake?
oh brother Blake.
Oof, oof. Okay,
well,
sorry, Jack.
yeah, Blake,
Oof.
go ahead and give your thoughts. I mean, it certainly was a pretty poor situation, and obviously
Oh man.
something that
To
shouldn't be
be
happening. So,
to be fair, I wouldn't have been. This sounds crazy. I would not have been shocked if Olbracht, the father, would have had to fall on the sword and get fired for that. I mean, that is a big, big deal.
Yeah.
I'm not shocked they didn't fire him, but I also would not have been shocked if they would have had to fire him for that. I mean, that's a huge deal.
He got fined $100,000.
When
The
that, and,
Falcon, yeah, the Falcons as a team got fired 200, they got fined $250,000.
and if I'm
yeah.
the Falcons, guess who I'm passing that fine down to? At least most of it down to him as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly like, leaking classified phone numbers and
Mhm.
stuff like that is certainly crazy. And obviously, the kid ended up filming himself, which is how they got busted, which is a whole nother craziness side of it. Is why would you even film yourself if you're going to do something stupid like that? So crazy situation, and I'm sure the Falcons will and Sanders will want to put that behind them, obviously. But yeah, it ended up being a pretty crazy draft for a lot of those stories and headlines. So.
Let me ask you guys a question. Do the Falcons play? Do they play the Steelers this year?
Well, the NFL schedule release has not been out
Okay.
yet, so we're going to have to wait until May 14th for that to happen.
Hey,
So
game. Week one. Come on, NFL. You want a storyline? Week one. Pittsburgh versus the Falcons.
Or yeah, Cleveland with
Cleveland.
Falcons
Cleveland,
with
sorry,
Sanders.
sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cleveland
No,
yeah,
versus the
it's
Falcons.
extra motivation for Sanders for sure in that one. Quickly, last thing on the draft, just the overall draft broadcast and setting in Green Bay. I think maybe people were a bit hesitant given sort of like the small town infrastructure and all that, but Looks like a lot of fans were in Green Bay. It looks like a pretty good time was had by most. So I think we give Green Bay a thumbs up in terms of that.
Yeah, yeah. Listen. Everybody in Green Bay was very nice and very friendly. Great atmosphere for a college town kind of feel at Green Bay. Nothing like it. It is definitely the most bucket list item place you have to visit if you haven't been. They are supposed to have one of the greatest.
Have you been, Jack?
I have not, but from what I hear, Blake, they're supposed to have one of the best cheese curds in town around. So
Ooh,
along
okay.
with bratwurst. So if you're up there, you might want to check that out because Green Bay, one of those NFL towns that's nothing quite like it. In a small town feel.
Not just a small town, in an actual neighborhood. It's
That's
wild.
yes, and you can see the neighbors in their backyard tailgating out in their backyard. Watch the draft, the view of their backyard, which is crazy to think, but they do for real, and that's just part of their passion and how they do things up there, and which to me makes it very special. And I think that the NFL just hit the nail on it and did a great job for what from their location. Which 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 to me, my parents and I watched a movie about it on Friday night, and we were so struck by it. And
Oh, give me the name of the movie. I need it, Jack. Your last one was great.
what was it? What we called, Mom? Hey,
I believe it was called Green and Gold,
yeah,
right?
Green and Gold. Yes, Green and Gold.
I haven't
We
heard
watched that
of.
on Friday, it was based on a true story, and we
Okay.
watched that, and we were just so struck by it, and so yeah, it definitely talks about of loving the Packers and really the passion about
It's
it.
a
On
historic franchise, right?
that's right, of
The
all the
only
history that takes place there.
the only one that doesn't have a owner, correct?
The
Yeah,
whole town
That's
owns
right.
them.
That's
owned by the city.
owned
Yeah.
by owned by the city of Green Bay, and that's what makes this place so special. And there's nothing quite like the atmosphere up there in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and in a small town Farmville, which is a very nice small town feel up in the Midwest, and nothing quite like it. It's one of those special fan bases, and probably in all of North American sports that you'll probably never see, and that's why it makes it so special and unique, and that's why Green Bay is a very special place.
Absolutely, absolutely. I thought it made for a great draft venue, and we'll see how next year's venue of Pittsburgh compares to some of the ones we've had previously. So we're look forward to next year.
Should be interesting.
All right,
Pierogies.
there you go. Plenty
Have you
of
guys, Blake or Mike, have y'all been to Green Bay?
No, I've never been to
no,
Green
I
Bay.
have not. I've been to Wisconsin, Milwaukee, before, but never made the trip to Green Bay. So definitely on the sports bucket list for sure, making it out to Lambeau.
How far are the Brewers from the Packers?
About 2 hour drive.
Yeah,
Milwaukee is
Yeah.
about 2 hour drive from
hmm
Green Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is Green Bay? I mean, how did the team, anybody know how the team ended up there? Why not
Well, they were one
Milwaukee?
of the original teams when the NFL was founded back in about like 1919, right after the First World War.
They've been around
Which
for a
means they would
while.
have been the AFL or the in, NFL. Like, wasn't there a merge between two different leagues?
Well, there
Yeah.
was back in right around 1970, the AFL and the NFL
But the
merged, but
Green Bay was one of the original NFL
they
teams.
were original NFL. Back in the
Yeah,
early
Mike, so
50s,
yeah.
they merged with the All America All American Football Conference. That's how Cleveland Browns came into the NFL,
Wow.
and they brought another team called the Baltimore Colts.
But
But
why Green Bay? I mean, what was there?
well, you had the Cannon Bulldogs as the original team in the NFL. So you got to figure, back in the day, you had all these, you had big cities, but also small towns. You know, anybody who could field a team, could join this fledgling league because
Wow.
back then it was collegiate football was number one. I mean,
Wow.
the NFL, the pro ball didn't have a following.
That's cool.
And so that's kind of
What's the other small town? Like, what's another? Like, what's the closest to Green Bay? Like, what NFL team is the closest to a small town?
There's not really a comparison in the pro game, I don't
Yeah.
think.
No, not anymore. I mean, you got, small market teams, you know, Pittsburgh coming to mind.
Okay.
But of course, the Steelers have they've got a huge following, ever since the Steel Curtain of the
Oh
1970s.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have those teams that have been around for a while, have the history, Steelers, Cowboys, 49ers, but Green Bay still has that, historical aspect in terms of they're in a small town, they've been in a stadium that's historic. I think they originally went back to the Packers because they were formed as like a meat packing company formed them,
Mhm.
which is how they got the name Packers, I believe. I'll have to have somebody fact check that me at home, but I think they kind of trace all the way back to those Midwestern roots of the
Yeah.
Bears, Packers, and
Well, it's like the Steelers, Steel Town.
yes,
Mm.
sort of that
That's right.
blue collar Midwest football is kind of what the roots of the NFL that we have today are.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's enough NFL draft recap. Like I said, we'll move on to Pittsburgh next year when we get there, but we got to preview another big sporting event. If you're watching at home, you can see Mike is currently at Churchill Downs right now, according to his background anyway, because we got a big race, that being the 2025 Kentucky Derby happening this weekend. The biggest horse race in the U.S. Always a great occasion this time of year. I know Jack, Mike, you guys are big horse racing fans, and you've had this one circled on your calendar for a while. So, in honor of that, we're going to be giving some Kentucky Derby predictions, i.e., picking our horse that we think will win, and any other predictions, thoughts on the race that we see fit. Before we give our predictions, Jackson, Mike, any just overall thoughts on the Kentucky Derby? How excited are you for this year? Mike, I'll start with you. What does the Kentucky Derby mean to you? How excited do you get for it on a year-to-year basis?
Well, to me, it means spring. Spring is finally here.
Right.
They call it the greatest 2 minutes in sports, and you know, it's the it's the beginning of the Triple Crown. But the other two legs of the Triple Crown don't compare to the Kentucky Derby. And you gotta love the hats that the ladies wear. I mean, it's a spectacle.
Oh yeah, some great outfits.
So it's great to see. And
Fun fact about the Derby, I didn't know that one of the things that makes it special is the amount of horses that run in it is
yeah,
substantially more than normal.
yeah. I mean, they're right now the field is at 20. They could get a lot more than that if they could, widen it. But yeah, um, I mean, everybody wants to get into the Derby because you win the Derby, then you can get all sorts of stud fees from the horse and the like. So it's a big deal, and you get to hear my old Kentucky home.
That's true. That's true.
It's a
That's
win-win. It's a win-win. Jackson, what about you? How excited are you? Do you get about the Derby every year when it comes around?
oh, very excited. I all I know is that it is like Mike said, the start of the Triple Crown season, much like with the Masters and the golf tournament. But this is to me, this is their Super Bowl. Their the biggest their Super Bowl of horse racing, we call it. So I've been going to horse racing. Now I've been going to horse racing before with with my brother Blake, who's standing right next to me, with Uncle Rob and my dad and Sam together. When we used to live in Tampa, go to the place called the Tampa Bay Downs. Um, when we lived in Tampa one time and we saw some horse racing in person, but the Kentucky Derby, there's nothing like it. There's nothing like the fastest 2 minutes in sports, and really all the passion about it, and everybody watching and tuning in, and like Mike and Uncle Mike said, the hats, the fashion, the celebrities, the food, the bourbon, pretty much all they can offer there, which makes it very unique, and how special it and special and sweet it is for what becomes the most greatest sporting event, one of the best sporting events out there in the world, which is really just that. So Kentucky home, and really the writers up, and the music and the trombones and pretty much everything that has to offer for the Derby just has it. It has it all, and that's what makes it so special and unique. And I think the Derby just I think the Derby is the example of that. And I think that the Kentucky Derby has a lot to offer.
Hey Jack, I gotta run, guys, but I'm gonna leave you with this. Metallica was once a great band, and they had a song titled Inner Sandman. And that's who's gonna win the Kentucky Derby. Sandman. I'll leave it at that. You guys have a great
Wow.
night.
All right.
All right,
Appreciate it.
well,
Appreciate it.
see about
Yeah.
that.
We got an early prediction there from Blake Limburger going with
See if like
Sandman.
Sandman at 5-1. So he's certainly one of the favorites, we would say, of the at least I'm seeing him at 5-1. So certainly one of the horses that people will have an eye on this weekend.
Hmm.
So I'm penciling in
Well,
San
Sandman won the Arkansas Derby, which is one of the prep races for the Kentucky Derby.
It's a good sign. It's a good sign. Mike, do you have a pick for us?
Well, yeah, I do. I actually got a couple,
Go
but
for it.
uh last I checked the weather report, it may very well be a muddy track.
Okay.
They're predicting rain in the morning and thunderstorms most of the rest of the day. So I am going to go with a muddy track, and this is the first time in 3 years that trainer Bob
Baffert.
Baffert is going to be back with horses in the Kentucky Derby. I am going to go with a mudder who won the Wood Memorial in the mud, and the winner of the Kentucky Derby is going to be Rodriguez.
Ooh,
Ooh,
wow.
okay.
Okay. I'm seeing him at 9-1 currently.
Hmm. Yep. And he is pole position number 4. So he's got a good pole position. And if there is a muddy track, it's going to be turned out probably going to be a very good pole position.
Okay. Okay. Now, I'm not a horse racing expert, but do we know the pole position, the gate position, does that correlate to anything? Like, i.e., is it better to be in one of the earlier
Depends.
gates or?
It depends on the track.
Okay.
If it's a short track, you want to be on the inside so that you don't have to, because when you come to the round of the first curve, you don't want to have to be running on the way outside. So just depending on the track. Now at Churchill Downs, they say the best pole positions are uh 4 to 10. Anytime within those.
Hmm.
Most of your Derby winners, at least the last 15 years, have been in those pole positions. The favorite, as an example, journalism is in the eighth pole position, which is a very good one.
Hmm.
If it's going to be just a dry dirt track.
Right. Okay. Okay. Rodriguez for Mike. Jackson, over to you. What is your prediction for this year's Derby?
So I am going to be also going with a Bob Baffert horse, as we all know, but not the ones you think. As we all as we all know, he has served a 3-year suspension, is now back on the grounds of Bob at Churchill Downs after what would be serving a 3-year suspension from the track from what he did from the wrongdoing previously before. Obviously, to not question the media once he gets to the track on race day, which he will not answer questions or gave comments for what he did wrongdoing 2 to 3 years prior. But as for my prediction, I am going to be going with Citizen Bowl. He is the favorite, and I have him winning the Kentucky Derby. I have journalism second, and I have Sandman third. And my long shot for the Kentucky Derby race, I'm going to be going with Baza at the 21 position.
Now, is Baza actually in the race? Because I had read that he was the first
Baeza.
alternative.
So we'll have to
That
we'll have
if
Not
to
that I
someone,
know
monitor
if
of.
that.
some other horse drops out, then Baza
Ooh.
will go in. So I'm not sure if Baza's actually in the race or not at this
You know what,
point in
Mike?
time.
It's a good thing you just asked that because I just did a little bit of recon and it looks like Baza's in, and unfortunately for you, it
Okay.
looks like Rodriguez is out,
Oh,
according to my sources here.
okay. Okay.
Um, it looks like Rodriguez is going to be a
Okay.
scratch. So it looks like the
Okay.
one of Bob Baffert's two horses.
Is going to be out. All
It
right.
seems like this was just tweeted about 20 minutes ago. Out of an
Okay.
abundance of caution, we have made a very tough decision to scratch Rodriguez, a small but slightly sensitive foot bruise that will need a few more days, resetting the plans and targeting him for the Preakness. So, Mike, do you have an alternative pick?
Yeah, my alternative pick is going to be American Promise coming out of the 5 hole position. His sire was Justify,
Hmm.
the 2018 Triple Crown winner.
Okay, a bit of good luck there, perhaps. Very nice, very nice. Okay, well, it's a good thing we checked while we're live on air, huh? Good
Yeah.
horse. These a lot of times you do see these scratches are pretty common in most of these races.
Hmm.
From my recollection. So,
Yeah.
okay, okay. So we got Mike down for American Promise. Jackson still sticking with Citizen Bowl. Blake's at Sandman, and me myself, I'm going for a horse. It does fit Mike's criteria of between that 4 to 10 gate or whatever you mentioned, but I'm going for Luxor Cafe at 14 to 1.
You're going with one of the Japanese horses.
I am, yes, I am.
Okay.
I
Okay.
like the look of this horse.
Hmm.
I think it's in a good gait. It's not one of the couple front runners, but I think it's got a good chance. Do you have any information to back me up here on Luxor Cafe, Mike, or you think it's a good pick?
No, I think it's a good pick. I mean, any of the um horses in the 4 to 10 or so they're all good picks.
I like the gate. Yeah, I like a good gate 7 horse. Seems about right to
Hmm.
me.
Yeah. No, any of them could win.
Absolutely. That's the joy of the sport, right? And
Hmm.
obviously you can make your bets on a horse, obviously to place or show if you don't think it's going to win. But anytime you can get a horse with not one of the front runners that ends up taking home that top
Hmm.
spot, it's always a big rush, isn't it? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
any more Derby thoughts, Jack, before we move on to our next topic?
Well, all that we should know is that there are 16 races total. Depending on the weather, they could suspend or postpone one of them, depending on how the weather goes. Like Uncle Mike said about with the scattered thunderstorms and really some rain in the area on race day. That you'll have the Kentucky Oats before that tomorrow on Friday, which should be the turf race that everybody should really rely on the fighting on the fills like Uncle Mike said that will be participating in tomorrow's race that for the run for on the turf in the Oaks. So that will be something that to possibly keep your eye on and watch. And but besides from that, pretty much you win for the roses and for the big day on Saturday is really the biggest race on the biggest stage for everybody's watching from around the country, possibly around the world. It's definitely that biggest horse racing event in the world. Sort of the Triple Crown that leads up to the Preakness, and then over at Belmont, which is the next two Triple Crown races, even though the Derby is the biggest one and start of it. So yeah, that's really what I know so far. That's leading up to the Kentucky Derby this Saturday.
Absolutely. Like you said, it's Super Bowl of horse racing. If you're gonna watch one race all year, it's this one here on Saturday. So yeah, hopefully the weather pans out, and even if we have a muddy track, it that makes it more authentic anyway, right? So fine by me. No, I'm excited for this one. I think it's gonna be a good race, and we'll certainly be keeping an eye on any of our ponies here and see if we got any winners, or even if any of our ones end up finishing top three. It'll make for some entertaining
Yeah.
racing for sure.
And
So,
and one thing that I want to keep in mind is that the last time we had a Derby in a muddy track in rainy conditions was Country House that got
mm,
disqualified. I believe
right.
it was in 2019 or so. The last time we had that. So do watch that and keep that in mind as you're watching the Derby on Saturday.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. So that's our big Derby preview. Now, I think we should shift over to a bit of playoff talk. Hockey and basketball both going on in the midst of their postseasons, and I think we should start with the matchup in the second round matchup, the only second round matchup that has been confirmed in the NHL playoffs involving the stadium that me and Jackson are both currently in or slash outside, according to our backgrounds if you're watching on YouTube. Uh, are the Carolina Hurricanes advanced past those pesky New Jersey Devils in 5 games? Took them overtime, and a couple of those games went to overtime. So, certainly in terms of a 5 game series, pretty hotly contested, but ultimately the Hurricanes have too much firepower. And then likewise, Uncle Mike's Washington Capitals took care of the Canadians in 5 games, that being confirmed last night with a victory in DC. So that means that Uncle Mike's Caps and our North Carolina professional hockey team, aka the Carolina Hurricanes, will be having a grudge match here on Good Guy Sports. Second round. I don't know the exact. I think we're TBD on the exact start time of that series, but we do have it
Yeah.
confirmed. One seed in the East versus I'm not sure if the Hurricanes had the second most points in the Eastern
I think they're the second seed, are they not?
well, so the thing about they reseed based on like the
Okay.
divisions, basically. So they front load it to where you play the teams closest to you in the playoffs, which is I'm not sure if I love that to be honest, but that's just the way that
Hmm.
their format is. So the Canes had the fourth most points in the Eastern Conference behind Toronto and Tampa, who Tampa's not out by the way. Which is maybe not too surprising given the fact they're playing the pesky Florida Panthers, who never seem to go away. But we can get to that in a second. But Mike, I'll start with you. Capitals' best record in the East. Ovechkin breaking goals. The vibes are good.
Hmm.
How worried are you about this Canes team?
Well, it's playoff time, so the regular season is past history. Anybody can win. But I'm good to see that Logan Thompson had a great night last night. He had 28 saves, and there was talk that he had gotten injured in game three. But it was good to see LT back in the between the pipes. So that's a very good sign for the Caps. Um, you look at the season tied between the Caps and the Canes, two games apiece. But Canes had the goal differential 14-11. Uh, but the last time the two teams met back on April 10th, the Caps won in 5-4 in a shootout. But the Canes, I think, is probably the best 5-on-5 team in hockey right now. And so that's a concern for the Capitals. So
Yeah.
we hope that somebody spent some Canes spend some time in a penalty box so we can get Ovi free and get him scoring.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a physical series for sure. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. Jack,
Yeah.
you're obviously repping the Hurricanes here. How are you feeling about this matchup? You pretty optimistic about the Canes' chances here against the Caps?
Well, optimistic and nervous at the same time
Right.
because obviously, like you said, you're going up against the greatest goal scorer of all time,
Mm-hmm.
Alex Ovechkin, who can really break records and put up more points and can really do it all. I just and so I just think that when I see the when I see the stats and really the highlights of it from the game is that the last time that the Capitals actually got out of the first round and moved on to second was back in the 2018 Stanley Cup year.
That's
And
surprising.
yes, and that's right. And then if I recall, the Capitals did also have one of their star teammates, and then in that year at the time that Uncle Mike was teaching the class not far from the Capital One Bank Arena during that time before he was retired, and then now all of a sudden for the and then for how the Capitals is that to me is that what I think should happen is the Green family should show up in our Carolina Hurricanes gear at Capital One Bank Arena, either at Game One or Game Two, depending on how the schedule goes. That we show up in our Canes gear and try to quiet the rock style crowd at Capital One Bank Arena. The whole family, Blake Gerke included, that me, my dad, and my mom should go. Never been to Capital One Bank Arena, but we can show up there for Carolina Hurricanes gear up there in Chinatown in DC, and then and the next thing you know, when I look at this matchup, that the Capitals they don't make too many mistakes, and they got and
Yeah.
in this matchup they got both great goaltenders. So
Yep.
this to me is going to be a chess match because
Mm-hmm.
the Capitals in their game last night, watching it, that the Montreal Canadiens had showed a little bit of life, and they
Yeah.
wouldn't go
Not a
away,
bad team,
and it
Montreal,
was a
huh?
very oh yeah sure they were a very young, very physical team that
Mm-hmm.
can really that Nick Player can really play and can really put up more minutes, and they are a very dangerous team, and that's really what playoff hockey is about. Like Uncle Mike said, so yeah, very physical and battle tested hockey game last night. That pretty much applies to every Stanley Cup final playoff matchup for both the East and Western Conference. So yeah, really what I would call bad blood and really really some fights going at it, just really some chippiness going at it. And yeah, there's something that you can really ask for what the Stanley Cup Finals really comes and goes and delivers.
No, for sure. I think this is going to be a really an all-timer second round matchup here. I think this is going to go definitely 6 games, probably even 7 games, which would lend Washington having that game 7 at home if it comes to that in their favor. But yeah, I mean, listen, this is going to be. I think we saw these two teams take care of business pretty handily in their first round matchups. I think we've kind of been circling this collision course all season, right? With the Canes and Caps, two teams close proximity, two teams that have been fighting for playoff positioning the past couple of seasons. So yeah, I mean, like Jack said, the Caps don't make many mistakes. You have to say, like Mike mentioned, though, the Canes, if we're talking about Svechnikov, Sebastian Aho, Jarvis, you know, Jackson Blake. I mean, these are some really talented hockey players, and obviously the goaltending has been pretty strong as well here in Raleigh. So. I think they're going to come into this series very confident. You know, we see it all the time in playoff hockey. Just because a team finishes first in their standings doesn't give them a free pass to the Cup final, you know, let alone the Eastern Conference Finals, right? So, yeah, this is going to be a grudge match, and obviously we don't have to give full predictions now. I think we'll probably end up doing another show in between while the series is going on, so we can obviously provide updates as we go along. But yeah, as a
Yeah.
hockey fan, I'm very excited for this series, no doubt.
I think whoever wins this series is going to win it all. They're going
I
to win
think
this. They
Mm.
I,
end up winning the Stanley Cup.
I think I agree with that, Jackson. Do you agree with that?
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, the Capitals, look, if they stay healthy and if they continue to play this way on a very high level, then yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing them advancing and possibly maybe lift World Stanley Cup. So yeah, I don't see why not why I see that happening.
On the other side of the Eastern bracket, obviously I mentioned the Panthers took care of the Lightning. Um, Panthers obviously had that playoff experience from last year. They seem like they're going to be a tough out as well. Toronto, after winning the first three, has dropped the next two, so they're going to be looking to take care of Ottawa tonight to see if they can advance there. So it looks like if that takes place, we'll have a Toronto, Florida matchup, kind of the old guard versus the new guard in terms of hockey, right? You know, hockey heaven versus hockey hotbed in terms of temperature wise anyway down there in Florida. So that would be an interesting matchup. Probably got to lean Florida in that one, right? Just given the strength of the team. Toronto has kind of always been one of those perennial underachievers come Stanley Cup playoff times the past couple of years, right?
Yeah, and you think about it, Blake, the Toronto Maple Leafs have had trouble and they have struggled in closeout games every single year. We talk about this, and that's really become the reality of a Maple Leafs fan is that you cannot get out of the first round because they have this heartbreak and they choke every single time and they've blown the lead and had too many missed opportunities for the mood of those fans up in Toronto. And they get tired and disgusted hearing about it every year, and that's just really part of hockey and why they can't even get over the hump. And that's really the reality and part of it for what those fans of this fan base really is of of every single year that we talk about this, and that's really the case.
Well, I mean, those fans would honestly just appreciate a series win here versus Ottawa, what their Ontario rival there. So they want to take care of business there first, for sure.
That's right. That's right. And then to your point about the Battle of Florida, Tampa
Wasn't much of a
has
battle after all,
no.
was it?
Well, it was at first until it wasn't. So, but Tampa and Sam Bennett and Matthew Machuk and Sergei Bobrovsky just had other ideas, and
Right.
they all showed up and made big plays at the big moments at the right time on both sides of the puck, and really that was the difference in this game. And Tampa Bay Lightning, they were the defending, they were the Stanley Cup champions back in the back for a few years back prior to their run, but now the momentum has shifted to um, from the Alligator Alley to the Sunshine State to now the Florida Panthers and Matthew Palmer Reese just they seem to be pushing the right buttons, and that's really what made this Florida Panthers team just really so dominant and just so very good is they really get how they really make more big plays at the right time and just really just get really got their momentum going with, with their with one of their with one of their with one of their big plays and short head ins and their power play and just really been dominant and just really just shooting the puck and just really getting past the net by by, by really the Tampa Bay Brzezowski goalie. It just really just Tampa Bay just really they tied the game. They had so many lead changes in that game, but they tied it up for most part of it. But Tampa just couldn't really hang or go toe to toe towards the very end of the game versus Florida because the Panthers just really just was just all Panthers the rest of the way entering in the third quarter and right towards the end of the game and Tampa just didn't have any more momentum and just didn't really have any steam left or just
Yeah.
really just didn't have anything left for the rest of their game of how tired they got towards the end of the game to do much to force their game, which it didn't really
Yeah.
they had enough in my opinion. So that's really
Yep. No, it was impressive. Yeah.
that's really part of why they end up they end up losing. So
Yep.
they
No, it
had a
was an
great season, but
impressive
yeah,
showing
right,
from
yeah,
from
yeah,
Florida for sure. And
of course.
I
So
think they're
John, yeah,
gonna really be a tough out in this playoff. So definitely keep an eye on the eastern side of the bracket. And then as well, if we're just looking at the other western side as well, no team has advanced from their first round matchup yet. All those series are 3-2. So we'll provide a full Western Conference update as well as we progress along in these cup finals, but still lots of hockey to be played on the western side of the bracket as well. That's kind of the beauty of playoff hockey is no team is safe, no lead is safe, no series is safe, right? So we're seeing
And
plenty of
it
that so
lasts
far.
forever.
Exactly, exactly. No, it's been great so far.
The Western Conference we go, Blake.
Indeed, indeed.
And then we have got the Oilers versus King, where I would have pointed out here about
Well,
every single year the LA Kings and Edmonton Oilers. It's all about beating David versus Goliath. What do I mean by that? You got to get past Connor McDavid, and the LA Kings so far have not been able to capitalize against the great Connor McDavid. He's by far the greatest hockey player of all time. It is like the Buffalo Bills
what
unable to
happened to
get
Wayne
past the
Gretzky?
Chiefs. Well, he's up there too, but
He played for the same team. You talking about the current best player or the all-time best
yeah, I'm
player?
talking about the current best player. That every single year we say the Buffalo Bills cannot get past the Kansas City Chiefs. Well,
Hmm.
that does rely on the LA Kings not getting past the Edmonton Oilers
And
because
we'll see. We'll see.
right because the LA Kings just had an early lead. They thought they put this one away in control. They did not, and instead the Edmonton Oilers thought they got the series tied. Well, they do not, and instead the Edmonton Oilers find themselves heading back to Edmonton with the series up 3 games to 2 and a possible closeout game and possibly to send the LA Kings home for the season and to move on to the next round, which could be something to keep our eye on. But besides that, we got the Stars and the Avalanche, where in this series every team has had the advantage for the home team, no matter what venue it's being played in. And then you have the Golden Knights and Wild, where the Wild, where things got very close and interesting at one point, where the Wild kept things close, but it was all Golden Knights after that. And then of course, to your point, the Senators tonight, who have an opportunity to move on and try to close out the series against, well, obviously, to force for Senators to force a game 7 back in Toronto, which would be very special. It would create more drama and theater for pretty much anybody. Be like a movie, kind of a get your popcorn kind of ready kind of game, which would be very fascinating. And so yeah, that would be a very fun series to watch, depending on how far it goes. But lots to look forward to in the playoffs for the sport of hockey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think we're in line for a really good cup final here for sure. And yeah, like I said, we'll be sure to provide plenty of Stanley Cup playoff updates as we progress into the second round, conference finals. Obviously, we've got some of our hometown teams here to keep an eye on for coming up here. So yeah, we're really looking forward to this Canes Cap series and a lot of these other series as well. So
That's right.
looks like we are just about out of time here on today's show, so we'll have to save the NBA playoff update for next week as we progress through that postseason as well. Some matchups, teams getting knocked out, etc., and some more playoff preview matchups as well once we get some of those second round matchups confirmed as well. So plenty of exciting sports happening the rest of May as we progress through here on Good Guy Sports. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of myself, your host today, Blake Gerke, Jackson, and Mike. I hope everyone has a great weekend and keep an eye on those horses in Kentucky.
All right. Thank
All
you
right.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Bye.